I finished my undergraduate studies in one of the known private educational network in our country, backed by several corporations, which allowed us to have quality education, even in non-capital areas in our country. As a result, that university rose as the top nursing school in our country this year due to the direct training incentive model by these corporations. And a lot of fresh graduates from that university were able to garner a job within a month so of their graduation because their corporate sponsors easily absorbs them with prioritization and incentives. That's the reason why they hold this kind of partnership in the first place. So I have a lot of good experience to see the model in this motion. The debate isn't just about corporation replacing academic mission. It's about corporations becoming co-producers of progress in a system that's currently paralyzed by inefficiency. Literally, this is what Gov is missing. In the status quo, ministries of education carry the impossible triple mandate of one, funding state universities, two, maintaining quality standards, and three, expanding access. But higher education is capital incentive. New labs, technology, research grants, and faculty development consume massive portions of national education budget. Therefore, any actor that can assume part of this cost directly determines whether the entire educational system can function sustainably. This makes corporate involvement not just beneficial but also necessary. Gov doesn't have any solvency within these issues because in your end, Ministry of Education will literally be overloaded, even in the extent to the private and semi-autonomous universities. And at the same time, profit from universities in the optics of this corporation literally relies on them performing really well. So they invest on pragmatic grounds to improve them. And I also think it's kind of unstrategic for Gov to choose their cases because they don't prove any harm at all. Like, that's why it's easy for us to just flip their literal frame into benefits for this because, it's kind of illogical in the first place. Their harms was like corporations will use this, so therefore they will make themselves more visible. Like, oh no, we will see a lot of more advertisement about private hospitals. Like, bro, even absent their involvement in universities, these corporations always have the capacity to extend their visibility in other means. Like, they can host a lot of advertisement in other areas. But the delta is in our side, we use this capitalistic structure at the same time. This is how businesses thrive and survive because you need to remember that private educations are still businesses that needs to survive in the first place. And it's so bad that a lot of them either becomes closed or become a mediocre diploma mill absent this competitive resource incentive from corporate involvement back then since not all of them have this package, not all of them have enough funding, since, it's not that prevalent before. And you will trace back all of this kind of harms inside proposition when you follow all of their framing. Second, this simply means that corporates pay universities to make them work better and train better students because they want to absorb the students also at the same time. So the claim that educational quality will be reduced in op is simply illogical based on the frame that they're using, especially when you analyze how this corporation incentive looks like based on our comparative. And also, please look at the wording of the motion. Gov didn't debate their burden. It's THS, the increasing involvement of corporate sponsors in higher education. The operational word is increasing involvement. In both sides of the house, corporate sponsors exist. You need to look at the burden of that. It's just that the delta of this debate is asking whether these corporations becoming more prevalent in these areas is good or bad. Based on that account, Gov is also out of the scope for THS motion. Third, I think Joseph is already clear on this. In their side, unpopular school will never be able to be restructured and always be drifted to be mediocre at the end of the day, since we have one, competitive state universities, and also two, we also have Ivy League school, for example. And this harms people who can only afford to go to the schools at the same time. Again, no amount of solvency was offered in Gov. It's just pure dance. Also, this is where we will continue to have underpaid teacher due to the lack of capitalization of these moments in free market. And this is why being dismissive that we currently have a funding crisis in the educational sector is the last thing that you want to do in this debate. Sure. Government involvement and corporate fundings can happen in our side. Remember, that's a non-exclusive benefit. It's literally part of the obligation of the state to cover these universities. But the delta is that we give them less burden. All universities follow the standard laid out by Ministry of Education and their curricula at the end of the day. And I'm going to prove and make that in this comparative. But before that, sure, I'll take the POI.
Two things I wanted to ask you, as you just stated, that we're outside the scope of the debate, whereas we completely mentioned that we are not against completely funded private institutions. In addition to that, do you mean to say that you are completely for giving this economic concentration of power to these private corporate funding institutions, in that they have the power of education and the power to control the next generation.
I'll respond to that. It's just that, again, it's your burden to read the motion and look at the account of the operational work. And also at the same time, this is how businesses work. Like, you literally need to capitalize on this moments where corporate sponsors are reaching out for your universities in order for you to expand. It's not like the only harm that you can see is that they will use this to capitalize their moments. Of course, that's how transaction works. But at the same time, you gain more traction for your university. One, you train a lot more students, you give them more facilities, you train them to be more competitive and give them more utility to advance exams. And two, you also give them a lot of job opportunities. Like, for example, absent this, it's hard for us to gain a job in real life. Let's accept that. But due to the fact that there's a lot of corporate incentive to sponsor the schools in the same place, like this is what literally happened to FINMA Education, since we are funded with a lot of pharma companies before. It's easier for us to be absorbed with this job because literally we have a training incentive. They also have all of those incentives to hire students from the same schools and universities that they have partnered with. So therefore, we also clear the gap that, it's hard for us to find a job as a new student, especially if you're not from that popular school, especially if you're not from Harvard, for example. So we clear all of those problems inside opposition. So therefore, when corporations fund private or semi-autonomous universities and sponsor research facilities or provide internship infrastructure that directly reduces the fiscal strain on the ministry. Literally, when corporations fund laboratories, donate technology, or maintain internship infrastructures, they directly cover what the MOE used to finance. Therefore, any actor can assume that the part of this cost directly determines whether the entire educational system can function sustainably. It is only on our side where we fix this in meta, and this makes the corporate investment not just beneficial but also necessary. When corporations fund laboratories and all of this stuff, we literally make them more competitive, and that's why at the end of the day, we lessen the burden of MOE, and they can now focus on better governance and regulation rather than micromanaging operational costs even in this semi-autonomous university. This division of labor makes the entire system of educational workforce far more efficient. Oops.